So the 2025 Divisional Round of the NFL playoffs are officially here, and all four of these games should be absolute bangers, at least much more competitive than Wildcard Weekend was. Well, in today's video, I'm going to preview all four of these matchups, talk keys to victory, some injury updates, as well as who I think will come out on top right after. Alright, the first of four games is going to be the Chiefs and Texans. Going to kick it all off Saturday afternoon at 3:30 Central Time. And if you want my full thoughts on this game, I just dropped a 22-minute preview on my main channel. How about those Chiefs? But basically, I'm taking the Chiefs to win this game, which I'm sure comes as no surprise. But KC is roughly 8-point favorites. Mahomes is 6-0 in the divisional round in his career. The Chiefs haven't lost at home all year, so why start now? Then they are obviously coming in very well rested. Hollywood Brown will be fully integrated into the offense. D-Hop's snap count should go up since they were saving him for the playoffs and for the first time all season. Kareem Hunt, running back Kareem Hunt, is entering a game where he knows the playbook thoroughly and is not sore as hell. Remember, he was signed off of his couch week 3 of the NFL season. No OTAs, no training camp, no preseason. And I really think Kareem might be an X factor in this one, possibly even in the pass game out of the backfield. On the flip side, the Texans offense has been more underwhelming this season than anticipated. Don't let their 32 points against the Chargers last week fool you either. Again, this is no disrespect, but 7 of those points came on a pick 6. 3 more basically came from another INT that put Houston in field goal range. And 2 more, if that wasn't enough, came from them blocking an extra point and housing it. So this is a defense-first team. The offense did put up 22 points per game this season. That's about as average as it gets. Not great, not horrible. They lost Nico Collins for 4 games with a hamstring injury, then Stephon Diggs tore his ACL, and most recently, Tank Dell had that gruesome knee injury against the Chiefs back in Week 16. So some of the offense's decline has been due to injuries. And then the O-line is probably the biggest issue, specifically along the interior. CJ Stroud was the second most sacked quarterback in the league this year. So you already know defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo is going to be sending all kinds of pressure. They'll just need to slow down Joe Mixon. Houston is 6-2 and Mixon goes over 100 yards, so that'll be a key in this one. The Chiefs have allowed the 5th fewest rushing yards per game, and they held Mixon to just 57 yards the last time they played each other, so I do like their chances to slow him down again. Then the Chiefs cornerback 2, Jalen Watson, is slated to make his return after being placed on IR after breaking his ankle Week 7, and that is going to be a huge boost to the Chiefs secondary. They obviously didn't have him out there December 21st, the last time the Chiefs played the Texans. Now again, Houston's defense has been carrying solid all year, allowing the 3rd fewest yards per game. Their D-line is elite, top 5 in pressures and sacks. They play confident and are out for blood. The problem is, this is playoff Patrick we're talking about. He's made it to at least the AFC Championship game every year since he's been a starter. That is unreal, and I'm expecting him to make it 7 years in a row after Saturday. Now, the second game of the divisional round will be between the 1-seed Detroit Lions and the 6-seed Washington Commanders. Washington's coming off a very close win in which Jaden Daniels looked phenomenal for a rookie quarterback, especially one making his playoff debut on the road. It's going to be a little tougher this time around, though, as they're taking on the best team in the NFC, who are also coming off a week of rest. The last time we saw the Lions, they were beating the piss out of the Vikings in Week 18 to secure the 1 seed. Jahmyr Gibbs went off in that game, and if Washington wants any chance in this one, they're going to have to try to slow this man down, which is a lot easier said than done. After David Montgomery injured his knee in the Bills game, Week 15, Gibbs took over as the workhorse in that backfield and put up 3 straight games with over 150 scrimmage yards and had 6 total touchdowns in that span. So that's why I'm not even sure that the news of David Montgomery being back for the playoffs is that much of a difference maker for the Lions. That's no disrespect to Montgomery, but more of a compliment to Gibbs. Either way, the return of Montgomery will help offset the workload and definitely not hurt the running back room. Regardless of who's getting the carries or the majority of the carries, the Commanders' point of emphasis has to be stopping the run because the Lions ran the ball the 3rd most out of any team during the regular season and gained the 5th most rushing yards per game and the 2nd most rushing touchdowns per game. Well, that just so happens to be Washington's biggest weakness. Over 135 yards per game is what they allowed during the regular season, which is the 6th most in the entire league. They tightened things up a little bit against Tampa last week, allowing just 4 yards per carry, but this Lions team is a whole different beast. Jared Goff finished the season, second in passing yards behind only Joe Burrow, and fourth in passing touchdowns. They became the only team in NFL history to have 4 players finish with over 1,000 scrimmage yards, with those being the 2 running backs, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and then wide receivers Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams. So it's safe to say this is one of, if not the most explosive offense in all of football, and the Commanders are likely going to have to be perfect on offense in order to stay competitive. They're coming into this game hot, winning their last 6 if you include the wild card round. They averaged 29 points over those 6 games, which is a tick above their season average. They scored 28.2 per game, which was the 5th best in the league. From a season-long standpoint, but they're probably going to need even more than that against the Lions. They've scored over 40 points 6 times this year. Now, the Commanders have put up about 35 points 6 or so times this season, so they're not far behind, but this is something they're going to need to do once again if they want any chance in this game. The Lions defense is banged up, so it is definitely not impossible. Jaden Daniels has been having a special rookie season with over 3,500 yards passing, nearly 900 rushing yards, and 31 total touchdowns. But even if he comes out and plays as well or even better than he did against Tampa, I just don't think his defense can get enough stops in this game to give him a chance to win it. Plus, the Lions are at home, and that stadium is going to be rocking way more than Tampa Bay's. No disrespect to them. Jaden Daniels and the Commanders' offense will keep it from being a blowout, but I see the Lions winning by at least 7 points, although obviously crazier things have happened as far as upsets go. All right, before I get into the rest of this preview, I wanted to share 4 of my favorite underdog picks for this weekend, all involving running backs, because there's some dogs in these games. Underdog is not only the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports, by the way, but any new signups using code CBTH will get up to $1,000 in bonus cash plus a gimme pick in the lobby. So that link is in the description down below. But with that, let's get to these 4 picks. I put 25 down on these for a chance to win up to 3.59x on the money, because a lot of these almost feel like gimmies. Saquon ran for 255 yards the last time he played the Rams, so of course I have Saquon being the leading rusher in this game, even over Kyren Williams. I then hit the higher on James Cook, Derrick Henry, and Jahmyr Gibbs getting a rushing or receiving touchdown in their games. Gibbs has 20 total touchdowns on the year and has scored 8 in his last 4. Then Gibbs, Henry, and James Cook all tied for first in rushing touchdowns in the regular season with 16. Henry has scored 5 in his last 3, and Cook has scored 7 in his last 5. So there you go, 4 of my favorite picks for this weekend. Link to tail is in the description down below. Next up on Sunday afternoon, we've got a great matchup between the Eagles and Rams. Philly is coming off a win over the Packers in which they forced Jordan Love to throw 3 interceptions, while the Rams are coming off a dominant win over the Vikings, sacking Sam Darnold 9 times, which ties a playoff record. These teams met back in Week 12 of the regular season, with Saquon having literally one of the best rushing performances in NFL history. This man ran for 255 yards on 26 carries with a couple touchdowns to go along with it. In case you're wondering, that is the 9th most rushing yards in a game in NFL history. He finished the game with 302 yards from scrimmage, which is by far the most in a game this season. So I'm guessing the Rams' priority number 1 is going to be doing everything in their power to try and slow Saquon down this time around. If they can manage to hold him to, say, 100 yards, then I really do think they have a shot in this one. Matt Stafford has been playing his best ball in December and January the past couple of seasons, and I think if he has time in the pocket, he can carve anybody up. He also had a heyday last week against the Blitz. Vikings tore him up, and it helps when Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are as good of a receiver duo as it gets. Kyren Williams has been one of the best running backs in the league this year as well. It also looks like they'll have tight end Tyler Higbee in this game, which is great news considering he got hospitalized after suffering a chest injury early on Monday night in that game against the Vikings. Then for the defense, their starting corner Akello Witherspoon left last week's game as well with a thigh injury and didn't return, and his status for Saturday's game is currently still up in the air. For the Eagles, they lost starting linebacker Nakobe Dean to a season-ending knee injury last week, and that is a big loss for that defense. Now, the Rams really weren't elite statistically over the course of the season, but that was due in part to all the injuries and them starting the year 1-4. But since then, they've gone 9-2, not including Week 18's loss to the Seahawks when they rested their starters. If you don't count that game, they've won 6 in a row and haven't lost since the last time they played the Eagles. Philly's only loss since then was against the Commanders in Week 16 when Jalen Hurts left in the first quarter quarter with a concussion. Their offense looked a little rough in Jalen Hurts' return last week, but when you have Saquon Barkley out there and the defense as good as they are, wide receiver 1, A.J. Brown, can just chill on the sidelines and read a freaking book. However, they'll need to come alive a bit more on offense in the divisional round because you cannot sleepwalk past the Rams if they are firing on all cylinders. I do see Philly winning this, but LA can absolutely upset them if the Eagles aren't careful. McVay is an incredible coach, and Matt Stafford is still a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, in my opinion. Either way, it's not going to be easy. Philly boasts a top-ranked defense in both points and yards, a top 10 offense in both points and yards. We all know Saquon rushed for over 2,000 yards, and you always have to account for Jalen Hurts being the dual threat that he is. And you can't forget he's got pass catchers such as A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert to throw the ball to. And finally, the last game of the divisional round taking place on Sunday night will be between the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. If you remember, the Ravens ran the Bills out of the stadium 35-10 in a bloodbath back in week 4, with Derrick Henry rushing for 199 yards. This man is insane, but that was a very long time ago, to be fair, and that game was played in Baltimore, with Sunday's game being played in Buffalo this go-round. The Bills were also down several key defensive players, and so I'm not sure this game will look like last and be a blowout. Instead, I think it should be the game of the week by far. The two frontrunners for the MVP award are going head-to-head in the playoffs with their playoff reputations on the line, so you really can't ask for much more. Baltimore has been on fire, winning their last 6 games and averaging almost 33 points a game during that period. It's actually insane to think that their quarterback is a legit MVP candidate. He threw for 4,100 yards, rushed for 900 yards, and their running back had over 1,900 yards this season on top of that. The Bills' offense has been just as special, though, in their own way. At one point during the season, they scored over 30 points in 8 straight, with Josh Allen doing Josh Allen things. Last week in the wild card round, they put up 31 on the Broncos, who only allowed 19 points per game during the regular season. Now, these teams on paper, it's very interesting here. They are very evenly matched. The Bills scored 30.9 points per game this year, second most in the league. The Ravens scored 30.3 points per game, third most in the league. Then on defense, both of them allowed exactly 20.8 points per game, which was tied for 8th best. So as you can see, these teams are nearly identical in terms of points scored and allowed, which makes this matchup even more intriguing. Vegas doesn't even know what to do with this game because the Ravens are just 1-point favorites, even though the Bills are home. You got to take the last time they faced off against each other into consideration. But I think there's a good chance this game becomes about who makes more plays between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry is probably going to get his, don't get me wrong, and so will James Cook. Both of these guys had 16 rushing touchdowns on the year, which is not only insane, but was tied for first. But I think all this is going to come down to the 2 MVP candidates, and this may be a conversation for another day, but Josh Allen is currently the favorite to take home the award, and some people don't really like that. You can see each of their season-long stats right here, and while Lamar outpaces him in nearly every single category, it's important to note that Josh Allen did not play Week 18. He started the game, handed the ball off, and then sat on the bench. Still, though, Lamar averaged more total yards and touchdowns per game while also throwing 2 less INTs. The main argument for Josh Allen, though, is that he's done what he's done this year with way less help. We expected them to take a step back, a lot of us did at least, once they traded away Stephon Diggs, but that has not been the case. Meanwhile, Lamar has Derrick Henry lined up behind him, a guy who just ran for over 1,900 yards. And then Zay Flowers is no slouch himself, who just made it to the Pro Bowl and had around 1,000 receiving yards. Meanwhile, Josh Allen's leading receiver was Khalil Shakir, who only had 800 yards. Regardless of who wins MVP, though, we should be in for a great game Sunday, and the winner of this showdown will most likely be taking on the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead for the chance to play in the Super Bowl. Something to note for Baltimore, though, is that Zay Flowers, their wide receiver 1, is probably not going to be playing in this game. He injured his knee Week 18, didn't play last week in the wild card round, and he still hasn't practiced this week, at least as of when I'm recording this video on Thursday morning. He still has a couple days to try and get out there on the practice field, but for right now, his status is not looking great. Even without Zay Flowers, though, I still think the Ravens find a way to get it done on the road. I think it'll be close. I don't expect Baltimore to blow them out again, but that offense has been humming over the last month or so, and they didn't miss a beat last week without Zay Flowers, and so I have them coming out of this game with a W. But let me know where you agree or disagree with me here. Then, who do you think is going to win these games? And finally, which matchups are you looking forward to the most? Let me know in the comments down below. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.